works. Okay, we are live. I think so. Okay, so that was, so for everybody who has been waiting for the next 8 minutes or so, I'm very sorry. We had a little technical issue. So we are back on now, and I think all of our panelists are back on. We are missing a couple of people. Hopefully they will come in. So please tell me, look at the other computer and tell me that we are live. Okay, so that was, they say that always keep positive and all that stuff, but things do go wrong, and I'm so glad that we managed to save the day in just a few minutes. So I'm just waiting for confirmation from my colleagues that we are indeed live, and then we will be able to start the conversation. So my conference questions are here, and let me bring up all my papers because I had to switch computer last minute. And let me check that the sound is, for those of you guys who hear me, can you tell me if my sound is okay? Like, yeah, sounds okay, cool. All right, and just going to bring up my document here to our panelist bios. All right, and let me check it. So are we live? Yeah. Okay, great, cool. Sounds like we are live. Everything's okay. We are 10 minutes, not even 10 minutes, 9 minutes late. But we are good now. Okay, guys. So for everybody who has been so supportive of the whole movement since we started, I really appreciate all of your support. So we have been our community has been growing so fast. I came up with the idea for this think tank about 3 months ago, just over 3 months ago, and we now have about 8,000 people who have joined the movement. We've got some amazing panelists here today, and I thought to have everybody added to the stream here so you can see them. But everybody has muted themselves, but I think it's really amazing to see everybody here. Then I'm going to make little introductions of everybody. The format is the same as last time, so we have 3 minutes per panelist, and then after that we will have some Q&A. Okay, so starting with just going over very quickly, going over the theme of this time, which is it's about growth versus impact. And what we want to look at is how over the past 70 years or so, our economy has actually grown so fast, and thanks to technology, we have been living, the luxurious kind of life of, not me in a way, because I come from the Middle East, but now I live in the West, so I kind of get a sense of what a middle class life could have looked like, when I was growing up in the Middle East. But for many people in the West who have lived, the luxury of the middle classes, it seems like that middle class kind of dream or the American dream, that it seems like it has stalled now. So we could say that it's partly because of the pandemic, but of course, at the same time, there's definitely the impact of technology. And it seems that this incredible movement towards growth that we've had seems like it's not quite sustainable in the long run. And I just wonder, it's a question, it's a genuine question, I always wondered whether this could have something to do with the male, female, different views and different approaches to economy and creating businesses and creating jobs. So in a way, when we look at it, our population has also grown tripled since 1950s. So it seems like this rate of growth is just not sustainable. So the two questions I'm kind of exploring here is this a male-driven economy? And could it be that by having more women in our economy, we may be able to reach a certain level of balance and have a better, a better view of the future in a way? So our first guest here, very appropriately, is Professor Alessandra Cassar, And she's going to talk about, Professor Cassar, I want you to kind of, maybe dive a little bit deeper into what I just discussed, and then, and guide us through your own thinking here.
Okay, shall I start?
So I'm going to mute myself. You can unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes? Okay. Okay, well, hi everyone. So thank you, Somi, for inviting me. You are asking such a fundamental question, of which, of course, I don't have the answer. But my work may guide us toward at least starting to understand how to break it down, this big question, into pieces that we might be able to address. So, hi everyone, I'm Alessandra Cassar. I am a professor of experimental economics at the University of San Francisco. If you want, after this event, to reach out to me for further discussion, question, and things, just Google me. My email is available, so feel free to reach out to me. Regarding the invitation of Somi today, I prepared a small snippet of what women want to compete. This is the question. So recently, in the past, let's say 15, 20 years, behavioral economists have advanced the hypothesis that women have a lower desire to compete than men. They are more risk averse, they may not ask aggressively for a raise, they don't lean in enough. And this has been offered as an explanation for why women are a minority in high-ranking economical and political position. Why don't we have more women CEO? Why don't we have a woman yet president of the United States? And even without going really at the top of the socio-political scale, women are still earning less than 80 cents on the dollar with respect to men, and are underrepresented in all the positions of power and leadership. So this topic is definitely timely and relevant. Well, this idea that women have a lower behavioral trait conducive to making it to the top, so the idea that Somi was saying, what if women were at the top? Would their behavior have an effect in the society that they build, in the companies that they lead? Would we have a more sustainable growth? We don't know, because we don't have that particular data. But we do know that this idea that women are behaviorally different, more egalitarian, more interested maybe in long-term growth, that short-term gains and profit, actually goes back to Darwin and the evolutionary scientists from the Victorian era. Yet, recently, it's about maybe 40 years that from evolutionary biology to psychology to anthropology, the scientists have highlighted the evolutionary significance of female competition. So maybe it's not true that females are less competitive than men. Maybe it's not true that they are more risk averse. Maybe it's not true that if they don't go into engineering, it's because behaviorally they're different and they don't want to, and it is all a question of choice. We know that the females that have more resources and powers, and this is true for humans as well as for bonobos and chimpanzees, what do they have? They have more chances for their offspring to survive and thrive. So even for humans is the same. There are so many advantages to women reaching the top. So all these studies have indicated that there isn't convincing reason to support the idea that selection pressure have resulted in overall less competitive trait. Rather, that the different sexes, the female and the male, have evolved to pursue different competitive strategies. And here are the behavioral differences. Male might thrive in high hierarchical structure, where there are clear alpha, beta, gamma, because reaching the top, they get all of the resources, and with the resources, they get all of the female, and nature programmed us for reproduction. So you can have, like Julius Caesar, 200 kids. For female, we cannot have 200 children. It's a quality versus quantity. And in this quality versus quantity, we prefer to exert competitive traits that are for the benefit of the offspring. What are these competitive traits? Creating structures that are more egalitarian, because egalitarianism, especially with female allies, means having more cooperation, more trust, and we all know is now seeped in the popular culture, it really does take a village to raise children. So in my experiment, I test various things and show that in all the classic experiment, you have a big competitive gap. You see that men compete, like to compete, excel at competing. When they're put in a competitive structure, they give their best. And women are always below. But once you add in the incentive structure of the game what matters to women, maybe something that directly benefit their children, whoop, the gender gap in competitiveness disappears. When you add things like you create more egalitarian structure because the game can be shared more by other people, whoop, you have that there is no difference in competitivity between female and male. So what does this say? This say that we have to change the system and not the women. If we want to reach a more egalitarian structure, we have to change the system and not think that it is women behavior that need to change. And once we change the system of incentive, we'll have ripple effect on the economy with long-term growth options.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Cassar. So next we are going to have, so we will come back to you in the after we've got everybody, we will come back to you with questions because I'm sure people will be posting the questions. So I'm going to bring Christophe shortly back to, So Christophe George is the CEO of Bentley USA. And obviously, it's a very competitive market. So I'm sure that everything I said, Christophe, is very familiar to you. I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts, in response to Professor Cassar and your views on why women may not have been able to have that kind of competitive edge in business. I'm sure that a lot of Bentley buyers, so actually this might be a very good way of looking at it, right? Bentley buyers, what percentage of them are men?
Don't take too much 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm going to solo you. So when I come back, it means that your time is almost up.
Okay, very good. So yes, I'm Christophe. I'm representing Bentley, which is a 100-year-old luxury car brand. So I'm probably the bad guy today, coming from an historically men-dominated business. And I'm not going to challenge Professor before on the advantages of men or advantages of women. I just believe that we need a diversity, we need a good balance. And companies not having this balance moving forward in the future will not be the most successful one. But coming from a very old industry with a very old history, I can tell you that things are very hard to change. And not only because we don't want to, we want it to change. We need this balance. But today, 25% of the talents coming out of engineering schools, for example, are women, only 25%. And we are an engineering and manufacturing company. So even if we want to have a parity or balance in our recruitment, the pool of women is much smaller. It's much easier when we speak about HR departments or communication, marketing, but in our industry, engineering and manufacturing are dominant. And this is a good reflection of the problem of the society, because right from the start, we will encourage women to go to some discipline, because you have preconceived idea of what women can do. And this is clearly limiting their potential moving further, moving on. But on the positive, things are evolving, and change of technology in the way we develop cars, we manufacture and market them, have always opened new opportunities to diversify our talents, and it will continue, and especially considering the need for much more emotional intelligence balance in the future. But we cannot wait for things to happen naturally, and we need to be much more proactive. Diversity is embedded in our company's strategic objective. And this is probably why Somi invited me today, because I'm a friend. but it is not for the sake of achieving quotas. This would be a total nonsense, just because diversity creates benefits. We have to fight against a single view. We need creativity. We need different ways to interpret and to understand problems. We need to have proper interaction between people. And when I speak about diversity, I speak about diversity in a much wider sense. Gender is part of it, but then you have culture, you have race, you have everything else. And it is absolutely crucial that companies fight for diversity, because it makes our employees, our colleagues richer, and it makes the company much better and much more successful. And we really believe in it. So concretely, in our company, even if it is an old established car business, we have now people in HR fully dedicated to improve diversity in our company, with clear targets, KPIs, with specific trainings for leaders in the business, as well as a development of our talent acquisition strategy. So things are moving the right way. So I just hope this gives a little bit of optimism to see that in some old industries, we are moving to, even if it is still a long journey. I cannot have time to answer to your economical question about growth, about how we see the future after this pandemic, etc. We need much more time for it, but coming back to the main topic, I believe that companies not being diversified or not embracing diversity and inclusion as part of the culture and the objective won't be successful moving forward.
That's absolutely true.
But Professor Cassar, men still have some qualities too.
That's true. Christophe, look, I know you since I made my documentary in 2017, and I reached out to a number of companies, and Bentley was one of the most progressive ones that responded and allowed me to come in and do that interview with yourself, and that's how we met. And I actually did mention to everybody last time that actually the whole concept of femme talent, how much you helped me with it. So I understand exactly. I can see both of your point of views. It's such an interesting, concept. I'm definitely going to come back and do longer. Maybe an hour and a half kind of podcast with both of you, because I think it's fascinating. I can see both of your point of views and I empathize with both of them. But so I'm going to mute you now, and let's
in between you and me, Professor.
Yeah, I think we should do like a debate. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so our next guest is Cobey. So let me bring up my notes here. So Cobey Flynn. Cobey is a multi-award-winning innovation marketer. She has launched over 30 brands, from incubator to national and global launch. Cobey is currently the vice president of the United Mint campus, and she's trying to replace classrooms with project incubators. So it's a very dynamic and co-working space. And that's where students work on real industry projects. So Cobey's observation is that women often seem to do more with less, and this brings up a very interesting question. Why is it? First of all, why is it that there's that kind of maybe sense of resilience and self-sufficiency in women? Why is it that they feel that they need to do that? Why should they have to do more with less? And another question, I guess, is that, so do you think, Cobey, that women can bring a different approach to the future of our economy to create a more sustainable world?
Yes. Okay. So first, I just want to add some more positivity to Christophe, is that, while it's 25% of women in the United States that are graduating with master's degrees in engineering, it is every year. So it's still a lot. It's a very large amount of women that are available for those jobs. And I think sometimes what happens to all of us, women and men, is we begin to think there's just no women out there. We don't know what women can do. And that's how, in my experience, I see women do more with less, because they are proving what they can do. And then how can, what you were asking is like, what does that look like in a sustainable future? So I think that we need to support and fund women. And if we can do that, we'll see bigger profits, higher wages, more jobs, and better quality of life. So I just solved all the problems, right? But it's nice that I have data to back that up. So as you said, I work in innovation. And in innovation, we look for two things. What do we know, and where is the opportunity? So we know that companies founded by women are better investments. A recent study by Boston Consulting Group found that women founders made more than twice as much revenue per dollar invested than their male counterparts. What else do we know? We know that publicly traded companies run by women are more profitable. We know this. We know this because Nordea Bank did an 8-year analysis of 11,000 publicly traded companies. They found companies with a female CEO or head of the board had a 25% annualized return since 2009. That's more than double the 11% delivered by the MSCI World Index. 25% versus 11%. So if I told you you could invest and make 11% or 25%, which would you choose? You would choose the 25% and you would invest in women. Now in the beginning, I told you that in innovation, we look for the opportunities. Well, here's the opportunity. In the US, about $3.5 billion of venture capital goes to women founders each year. That sounds great. You guys are patting yourself on the back, I know, but I'm going to tell you it's only 2.7% of the total venture capital investment. So in the context of what we know, 2.7%, we know that women in positions of power, when funded and supported, earn superior returns for the investors. So the solution is elegantly simple. Support and fund more women, see more return. And I think it's important that I also address that women are already bringing a different approach to sustainability. The only way we're going to move towards sustainability is through innovation. And in Fortune 500 companies, so fully funded and supported, teams managed by women average 20% more patents. So if we're going to have a sustainable anything, future, economy, society, our best bet is to start funding and supporting women at a proper scale.
Very, very good. Very eloquently put. Thank you so much, Cobey. That was really good. That actually, speaking of investment, I'm going to bring in Ramona, who is our next guest. Ramona Liberoff. Am I saying it correctly?
Yes.
Ramona. Yes, great. Okay, so Ramona is an investor, and she has a passion for and focus on sustainable development goals. So Ramona is currently in Berlin, and she's working on solutions to critical, hard-to-fund sustainable development in emerging markets. So I have so many questions for you, Ramona, and you spoke so eloquently when we were speaking, when we were doing the rehearsals. I definitely want to have you back for a long conversation. But today, can you just tell us, like, very roughly, when we look at the financial system, it's always been focused on linear growth and at all costs, essentially. So when we talk about sustainable growth, it's not always that straightforward. So can you explain a little bit about your experience in that field, and where you think, or how you think, women can bring in a new perspective and new values to that?
Of course, Somi, and thanks for having me. I've had a few technical issues, so forgive me if the sound cuts out at any point. I'll just try and carry on. So one important thing to think about is, as you mentioned, Somi, the financial system has been quite linear. But when you actually look at the world's to-do list, the Sustainable Development Goals, you realize it's not a list, it's a system. For example, you may or may not know that on the number 6 best solution for climate change is actually the education of girls. So if you're going to think about climate change, you also have to think about education. You also have to think about girls. Now, the challenge is today's financial systems have excluded a lot of information. Many academics before me, far more eloquently than I can do in 3 minutes, have written about the fact that our current financial models are not particularly system friendly. Although with technology allowing us to analyze a lot more data, we're getting there. But it's more than just a technical question, because we actually have to want to model the entire economy. So for example, if you really think about the economy and take a step back, we leave out enormous chunks of it. Whatever happened to valuing caring work? It's somehow done for free. Why is energy generation more valuable than energy conservation? Why do green revolutions that revolutionize agricultural output but destroy land, why do they not contain a component for actually clearing up? So who's going to pay the bills for what we've created if we don't actually value the future appropriately? There's still a long list of impossible SDGs to fund, despite the fact that they provide value to us all. What they do depend on us doing is actually reimagining and recontextualizing economics. Climate mitigation, for example, may not cost as much as new energy, but it will require us to rethink about landscapes, for example, sustainable land use. Democracy needs recovering, but the social media companies make an awful lot of money on breaking them apart and sort of promoting clickbait. So there's a number of areas where we've got to figure out how to fund the future that we want to see. Now, on the question of women in finance, it would be easy and crowd-pleasing for me to say that women are naturally more inclined to impact investing because we have children, not that I do, but some of us do, that we think about the future, that we're supposed to care about morals, and of course, we don't take any risk and we pay back what we borrow. Now, that makes for great headlines, but actually it's not particularly appropriate when you look at the system of finance today. It's more interesting for me to look at how power and vested interest relate to gender in the real world of women in finance. Interestingly, women represent about 10 to 15%, no more, of the senior decision makers in finance, arguably our most powerful industry. But when we actually look at the niche areas of sustainable innovation or impact investment, which there's somewhere between 15 and 20% of capital, this is an area where women are disproportionately leaders and entrepreneurs, at least 50%, if not more, in leadership positions. While they currently control a fraction of the capital, and this is the sort of counterpoint to Cobey's point, they are bringing in new measurement systems, pushing forward with technology's capability to overcome our limitations in modeling systems, and creating new structures and products such as impact bonds, and new models like donut economics, which blend the language of mainstream finance with systems change. So my solution is equally elegant. If we support innovative finance, we give it our attention and our money, we will actually end up with far more women in positions of influence and power to help us change our financial system. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was so, again, eloquently put. It's like, I feel like I'm being pulled in all these different directions. I want to agree with everybody. It's just so amazing. And this shows the complexity of human, psyche and human behavior, because it shows that, there is no black and white, there is no simple answer. We are not living in the world of the good guys and the bad guys being so clearly apart. Which brings me to the subject of when you talk about, recently with everything that has happened with Brexit, there's been, on the one hand, it feels like, for example, in the West, in the UK and also in America, there's this kind of movement of going back to that feeling of, let's make it great again, and let's get rid of the immigrants. And then on the other hand, there's all this talk of diversity, and everybody's trying to kind of be sort of really right on with saying, like, we need more diversity, and we have respect for what people of diverse backgrounds bring in. So our next guest is Samar Shams. She is a immigration lawyer. She has worked very closely with the UK government, and she's got some very valuable insights on how the immigration laws may be putting women at a disadvantage. Samar, can you tell us your perspective? But also, I'm hoping that, like our last two guests, last few guests, that we can bring in a little bit more positivity as well. So it's always good to hear, both sides of what's going on. But yeah, I'm all ears. I think you're muted.
Thanks, Somi. Yeah. So.
Yeah, good. It's good now.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Samar. I'm a UK immigration and global mobility partner at Spencer West. And similarly to the innovations described by Ramona and Cobey in their fields, there are innovative proposals put forward by women in the legal framework. So for example, Wendy Williams, who's the author of the Lessons Learned Review, on the Windrush scandal, proposed the creation of a migrants commissioner role to lend a voice to migrants who otherwise don't have one within the system. I wanted to discuss how an innovation within the legal industry generally can give women an opportunity to redress the gender inequality. So I'm not going to particularly address the inequalities and indirect discrimination within the immigration rules necessarily. So for example, the prohibition on prorating salaries for part-time work for sponsored workers, that indirectly discriminates against women. But I wanted to discuss a shift in the legal industry, actually, that will help women redress the gender inequalities, and particularly the proportion of women in senior positions. So the traditional law firm is a very challenging environment for women. There are more women solicitors than men, but they only make up about 20% of equity partners, and flexible working is not very common. So whilst 40% of women in employment in the UK work part-time compared to 13% of men, there are really very few opportunities for it in a traditional law firm, and certainly very few at the more senior levels. So at the same time, there's been a shift away from the traditional law firm to what I would call a non-traditional model, where solicitors are self-employed and they operate under the umbrella of the firm. And this alternative business model really affords women lawyers opportunities for success. So they benefit more from their work, both in terms of recognition and monetary gain. And they don't have to prove themselves to these largely equity male partners through face time, whilst taking home a salary, which is generally equivalent to 1/3 of their billings. And there's a lot of data on women in leadership roles having a positive effect on the bottom line, which again, Cobey referred to in particular. So it would definitely increase profitability and benefit the economy as a whole. McKinsey and Company has a great set of reports on the link between gender diversity and profitability, and those reports demonstrate that that link is growing stronger, not just that there is a link, but that it's growing stronger, which is fascinating, I think. And there's also extensive data on the benefits of flexible working, which is afforded by the traditional business model. So not just to the individual in terms of job satisfaction and increased engagement, but the wider effects of that for the industries and the economies. So basically, under this model, women benefit more directly from the fruits of their labor than they do under the traditional model, where they're handing it over to the largely male equity partners. So I think women can catalyze a change in the legal industry, gain senior positions, which will have a self-perpetuating effect of normalizing the perception of women as leaders as well.
Yeah, I keep forgetting to unmute myself. Thank you so much, Samar. That was very helpful to hear that side of the story as well. Now we're going to go with our next guest. We're going to go to a completely different area, which is kind of refreshing. That's why I like to kind of mix things up here and have people from very different backgrounds. Let me make sure that Kim is, she's on here. So Kim, it's quite fascinating, Kim. You work in the esports industry, right? So she's got quite an interesting story, Kim. She's an esport industry speaker, experiential event producer, player experience and travel and hospitality guru. So Kim has kind of brought her experience from the event and hospitality industry into the esports industry, which is a huge area right now. You know, I think in the next few years we're probably going to see that esports might take over the Olympics. So very interesting, especially now that we all live in a virtual environment. So Kim, I'd like to hear your views on women. You know, this is a whole new area in industry, in economy. Is generating a lot of money. And I've been speaking actually to a number of investors that have been telling me that some of the best investment they've done has been in the esports industry. So what are women doing in that space, and what are opportunities for them? And just share some of your perspective with us.
I'm honored, Somi. Thank you so much. It's really interesting for me because I come from a unique perspective in that I've done over 500 events in my career in 25 years in the hotel and hospitality industry. And it wasn't until 10 years ago that I had the privilege to work on a press junket for Activision and Call of Duty. And it was in that experience that I went from a live event or live experience into going from a game that they were about to produce, which was $1 billion game. And I had the opportunity to build the the hospitality and travel side for the press and build an experience. And it was in there that I found out that I got my gamer tag, the COD Mom, because what I found that they didn't see when you're in a one-dimensional, situation like video gaming is that there was the nurturing side of women. There is the hands-on approach to women. And I think what I appreciate, what I've learned in the last 10 years of being in this industry and being a veteran in this industry, is that although men have been a very big development and producers and things that have created the video games to be who they are, there's a lot of women who've been behind the scenes who have been building out as well. And in my 10 years of doing this experience, I was able to kind of dive into the depth of it. And what I found is that being emotionally intuitive is very unique to being analytical. And it's not that one is better than the other, but finding that what we miss in this day and age is that we've kind of got caught into using technology as the only way to build a kind of another world, and technology taking over. But what they haven't realized is that even in this pandemic is that we haven't really built the bridge between the technology that we're so in love with bringing it back to the old school understanding of the human experience. So what I've learned in this is converging the digital with the human experience. And so in my 10 years of the video game industry and being an older person in this gaming kind of experience, that we've missed out on doing what we do every day, and that's having one-on-one interpersonal communication. We've forgotten about the 5 senses. We are so quick to having analytical conversations that we've forgotten that people are human. The psychology of relationships and building out the experience is so much more exciting than having a one-dimensional conversation. We've learned to talk at people instead of to people. And so going through this pandemic and moving into 2021 is going to be really important to go back to learning the 5 senses again and learning how to take that one-dimensional experience and bringing it into a 3-dimensional opportunity, whether that's talking analytically from investing money or going into an actual event or building brand acknowledgement and doing consumer engagement. We've forgotten that. We've forgotten who the audience is. And I think that that's what's missing in this day and age that women get to bring back to the table. We are nurturers by trade. One of the things that we do so well is that you could bring a man or a husband and wife, let's say, to a house and say, okay, I want you to build your house. And while they say that a man can build a beautiful home, a woman has already interior decorated it, right? We've already created a whole 360-degree experience. And it's in that we have to learn to shine again in being able to add that piece to it. We collaborate, not necessarily compete. And I think that's the part that is most exciting as we get into the next chapter in 2021 and beyond.
Amazing. Very, very interesting. I could speak with each and every one of you for hours. So fascinating. Speaking for hours, Michael and I have definitely spoken for hours. So our next guest, Michael Otoole, he is, until recently, he was one of the MDs at Morgan Stanley. And Michael has had incredible impact on me. I think I will not be exaggerating if I say this may not have happened had it not been for Michael. Michael has been a mentor. We have been having very long conversations. created a project for Michael around emotional intelligence in the workplace for young people, and that project led to me getting a book deal to write, about the future of work, and my book Career Fear that came out a few weeks ago. So, Michael, I will let you speak for yourself. I know that you're all about positivity, about thinking about what women can do, what are opportunities for women, and I will let everybody hear it from yourself.
Okay, great, thanks, Samar. One thing that I hear when I talk to women about technology, especially infrastructure technology, is that they, and actually, if you look across the internet about, what should women be doing in technology, what you read is that they should be doing support roles, administration roles, web development roles, things that essentially won't be around in a few years' time. So I think that advice is not correct advice. But then when I ask, well, why don't you go into something else in technology, I get the answer that it's too complex, it's too expensive. You need to know about multiple disciplines. You need to understand about servers and storages, databases, networks. That's not true. So especially over the last 5 years, that's really not true. So the underlying infrastructure, you don't need to buy it anymore. So there's very little capital expenditure required. And really what that focuses me on is that women should be looking at, as Forbes said, and this is a quote, women are pushing the frontier of innovation. So I think that's where people need to be looking. And they are. If you take a look at Forbes' list of the top 30 companies run by females, it's very interesting. I just randomly picked a few. There's 4D Healthware, Star Cunningham's company, virtual healthware management platform, Affectiva, spin-off from MIT Media Labs, where Rosalind Pickard is the professor. That's software that reads emotions based on facial analysis. Astral AR, Leal Sala, that is a drone piloting software used for policing and things like that. There's Blendor, Stephanie Lampkin's company, which is about a recruiting application that attempts to remove bias. Blue Cargo, Alexander Griffin, global maritime data analysis for more efficient cargo terminals. So at some stage in the past, these things have been innovated. And the very positive thing about this is a very, very short list from the Forbes list that you should take a look at. The sort of hallmark of at least these companies is that there's some element of doing good in there. Or, doing the right thing, doing good. So I think that's very impressive. And I think women have got a lot of what it takes to create a great startup. So, one of the big advices I would give to people doing a startup is to really identify a market need. Almost half the startups fail because they don't have a market. I think women will be a bit more careful and a bit more risk averse than launching a company with a product that doesn't have a market. The second thing is to say, be honest with yourself about resources, have a clear vision. And the final one, I think probably will resonate with Somi, is that really every company that's strong nowadays needs to have a really powerful digital presence. So I really hope this becomes a trend and people steer away from the nuts and bolts of technology and focus on the, as Forbes put it, pushing the frontier of innovation.
I couldn't agree more with you, Michael, on that one. I mean, I don't have a technology background at first, going back. And now I'm teaching myself Python, by the way. I wake up and, on Saturdays, I spend all day working on, math and Python and things like that. But originally, I had never picked up a camera. But it's the vision behind it, that drove me to create the kind of marketing content that now I work with companies like Steinway Pianos, which is one of the best, I would say it's the Rolls Royce, or let's say, sorry, Oh my God, I said Rolls Royce, Bentley. It's the Bentley. It's the Bentley of pianos. Yes, it's just like, it's a term, isn't it? It's the Bentley of pianos. So our next guest is Rita. And let me bring her to the stream. Oh my God, Rita, I'm so sorry, you've been hiding back there. So Rita has. I need to remove one of you guys so we've got a slightly better view here. Ramona, I apologize. I'm going to remove you just because your camera is like in a vertical angle. So so that's the only reason why I'm going to put you from this. Yeah, okay, cool. This looks okay. So Rita is she's a diversity and inclusion strategist. This is fascinating to me. So she's won many awards, and she's now the CEO of UMA, which is an international platform that partners with organizations to help them attract and retain and develop women and minorities in the workforce. Rita, I'm really fascinated to hear what you've got to say. Especially, I wish that when I was applying for jobs to BBC and to British TV channels about 5-6 years ago, you worked with them, but obviously at that time you were not working with them, and I couldn't get in. Which the flip side of it is that I started my own business, and now I'm here doing this. So I'm kind of glad that didn't work out, but yeah. So tell us about your work as a strategist in diversity.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Somi, for having me. It's really an honor to be here at the think tank as well. So thank you again. So yeah, the work I've done has taken me across the world really on advising companies and individuals to really build up confidence to work on core skill sets in terms of how do you bring differences, acknowledge that they exist from different cultural backgrounds as well, back into the workforce, and how do you get everyone to really perform better? So ultimately, it's better for the bottom line of the company. So I just wanted to share really a few statistics on there. I know that obviously Samar and some other folks mentioned some stats are out there, and McKinsey in particular. So for example, if you think about this picture here, that if men and women played an identical role in the labor markets, then according to McKinsey, as much as $28 trillion could be added to the global GDP by 2025. That is a pretty stark statistic. However, that's the reality is very different. For example, think about how many FTSE 100 CEOs we have that are women. And those 6 that we do have are paid approximately 54% less than their male counterparts. Additionally, 25% of women, per McKinsey again, left the workforce during the pandemic because of extra burdens and not an equal split of household responsibility and childcare duties. So obviously there is some sort of a differential here. There is something stopping this beautiful reality from happening and the equality. So if we think what those are, obviously motherhood is one of them, and inadequate parental leave, depending on which country you're at, which company you work for, and different means like that. Often we think about the research of women when they actually leave, the women when they have children. Now, Harvard Business Review actually did a study on that if you apply for a job and you listed on your resume, your CV, that you took a career gap, and the reason for that was because you were a mother. So motherhood was the reason. You are 50% less likely to be called for an interview than if that gap was because you had made redundant or for another reason. That is the stark reality. So there's a lot of, obviously, those norms that we're looking at, these cultural biases that exist, these gender biases, but there's a lot of societal barriers that also exist from a society perspective. For example, Ipsos Mori and the Global Institute of Women's Leadership at King's College London conducted a study that globally 18% of men felt that staying at home to look after children makes you less of a man. Great Britain, for example, came in at 13%, which means they obviously beat that average a slightly bit, with the Netherlands at 10%. But then you think of some of the Asian countries with a whopping 76% in South Korea, and you wonder why this equality doesn't exist. So when we talk about equality from a gender perspective, we really have to focus, on changing mindsets. So it's not just the corporate culture, it's not just society, it's the educational culture and everything like that, the entire infrastructure in general. So I think just to end, I'd love to say that when we talk about let's sort of have habits that women can be a little bit more like men, I would like to flip the conversation over and said, how about we try to get men to understand more women and what their traits are? And if that was understood, then not only would there be more gender equality, but a substantial change in mindsets too.
Amazing. I love that. I can see lots of people saying, yes, I agree. I actually watched a TED talk on this a few weeks ago, and I thought it was fascinating. One of our lovely volunteers, Hengame, sent me a link, and that was basically exactly the gentleman saying that we need to have more men being like women rather than the other way around. So it balances the situation, and I agree. So just because we've got only a few minutes left, so just a quick shout out to our next group, because we now have another 8 speakers for the next group. So I'm gonna say goodbye to everybody on this group for now, because we have to let the people from the next group come in while we hear Sarah. And I'm definitely going to do long interviews with all of you guys. So all of the questions that are coming through. So as everybody who tried to log in today earlier realized, we had a little hiccup with our technology, with our link. And that's why we were running a little bit late. But everybody who is here today, the questions that you guys are submitting, I'm seeing all the questions. We've got a lot of them actually. So I will be doing interviews with our panelists separately, and I will definitely put all of these questions to them. So I'm going to now bring Sarah to the front, so Sarah Hammond, our next guest. And the rest of you guys, I'm going to kick you out so that the next group can come in. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, thank you. So Sarah, thank you guys. Bye. So Sarah, our next guest is Sarah Hammond. And by the way, for those of you guys who are watching it, don't think it's finished. Nothing's finished. We've got another whole group coming in now, and a group of amazing panelists that are coming in, and I'm just getting warmed up, so getting my energy up. So we're here for another hour, and our next guest is Sarah Hammond. Sarah, it's quite fascinating to me. Sarah, you've been a CEO in a very male-dominated environment. So can you tell us a little bit about your background and what was it like, being a CEO in that environment? And like in 3 minutes, what can you tell, women who are trying to do something like that in their own environment?
Thank you so much, Somi. I appreciate it. Yes, in the industry that I work in, it's electrical, air conditioning, refrigeration, and plumbing. And most people would consider that a male-dominated industry. And so people always ask me, what does that look like for you, Sarah? So what it looks like for me, I'm just going to give you a couple of examples. For one, in the beginning, the technicians, when they would go into warehouses to pick up parts, they would be told that they would be made fun of and harassed because they worked for a woman. I've had applicants come in to apply for positions in my company, and after they find out that a woman is the business owner, they refuse to come back for the actual work. They would rather work for a man in this industry. But it's funny that we talk about industries, because this company, Atlas, is not a man's world. It's my world. And so I had to learn a mindset and develop and weaponize myself to succeed in this type of industry. And so I want to give you a few tips on how I did that. And so the first thing I did was I had to learn more about me. I had to understand what my triggers were. I had to understand my leadership style, and I had to understand the limitations that I put in my own mind. And the only way to do that was to progress and learn and study as much as possible. I did not want to be a man. I did not want to be a man in this industry. I knew that being different for me would give me that edge, and I took full advantage of that edge. So one of my biggest philosophy people that I like to study is Lao Tzu. He does a lot in philosophy and psychological understanding, and I want to share something with you from him. He says, water is fluid, soft and yielding, but water will wear away rock, which is rigid and cannot yield. As a rule, whatever is fluid, soft, and yielding will overcome whatever is rigid and hard. Then in another paradox, whatever is soft is strong. So I started learning personality tests. I started having my leadership take personality tests. I got a professional business coach to come in, and I found mentors in my industry that were men, that were not intimidated, and that were supportive and helped me continue to learn this type of industry and be a great leader. And by recognizing my own strengths and weaknesses, I started studying the art of me, right? And so why? Because you are that leader. So you need to find out and figure out who you are as a woman. There's a book, it's called The Art of War, and it's written by Chin-Ching Chu. And he talks about many ways to repackage the way women are viewed. I'm going to give you some of those structures. He talks about women being creators of beauty. Women are keepers of light. Women do not give up. Women know how to be sensible. Women are intuitive. Women are guardians of Mother Earth. Women are strong. So in that leadership book, I started to study the art, again, of me. So you as a woman, when you're coming into an industry, but it is your world, you need to remember that, and you need to remember who you are. It's funny that one of the biggest life lessons that I've learned comes from Alice in Wonderland. If y'all remember that Chester cat, he goes up to her and he says, "Who are you?" And I think that's one of the biggest leading questions in the world for women in any world that they work in. I am Sarah Hammond. Welcome to my world. Who are you? Thank you, Somi.
Thank you so much. I wasn't sure if I was muted. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was really fascinating. It was I relate to it on so many levels. Being a filmmaker, you know, our industry is very much male dominated, and going on shoots, you know, early on, especially when I was younger, starting out. We will definitely have a longer chat over a podcast. Thank you so much, Sarah. So I'm going to bring in the next group now, and we will take the conversation further. So I'm going to remove you, Sarah, so that I know a few of our guests, thank you, are waiting to come in. So we've got our next set of guests here. I'm going to add everybody to the stream so you can see all their beautiful faces. And okay, let me see, I've got here Jyoti. Yeah, great. So this is everybody. So one thing I learned today is that next time in each group, I'm going to have 8 people, including myself, 9 people, including myself, rather than 10. Because when there's 10 people, it just doesn't all fit into the stream. So you learn, you live and learn. And also, sorry guys to keep you waiting in the beginning. We had a little hiccup with our technology. So, well, I'm guessing that you've been listening to the first part. So we are going to continue from there with the same theme. So our next guest is, oh, by the way, just please be sure to mute yourselves if you're not speaking. So Jyoti, I can see that you're not muted. Yeah. Okay. So Jyoti, if you could mute yourself. Okay, great, awesome. So our next guest, let's have a look here. We've got Daniela Barone Soares. I'm hoping that I'm saying your name correctly. Is that correct? Yeah. So Daniela is the CEO of Snowball. It's an impact investing fund. We had some very interesting conversations that I can't wait for her to share with you. It's around how it's around the intersection of commercial and impact roles, and she has worked with both startups and large corporation and corporate environments. So I'm going to bring her to the front so that she can share some insights with you. So Daniela, if you could tell us about how we can use maybe capital as a lever of changing behavior so that we can create systematic change in society, and what women bring into the conversation here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Somi, for this opportunity and to be in this wonderful panel. So I would like to share with you sort of in a practical way how we can change our economic model into a sustainable one for a healthy, prosperous, and peaceful future on this planet. I'm the CEO of Snowball, which is an impact fund, as Somi said, and we are on a mission to change the way in which financial markets operate and to show it is possible to create a deep, positive impact for people and planet, whilst also generating a sound financial return. So our investments are intentional in contributing to solutions for people and the planet. They are additional to what might have happened anyway, and they are measurable so that the improvements are tracked and stakeholders are involved and informed. So we do this whilst providing investors with attractive returns. So we are incredibly diversified and low risk, and we invest globally in things like sustainable forestry, social housing, and renewable energy. A gender lens and an ethnicity lens investing cut throughout the portfolio. So we look at those things whilst investing and track them. So to change financial systems, that's a big mission. And capital is a great lever for behavior, as Somi said. We achieve it in practice, working in ways often seen in strong female leaders, nurturing relationships with all our stakeholders, being open source and transparent with our methodology, collaborating with our competitors, because in reality, we all need to race together to a sustainable future. And we challenge the greed in the investment management industry by limiting our own remuneration. As our fund grows, we progressively reduce our fees. Technology will help, particularly AI and machine learning. But technology is an enabler. Right now, it is the human choices which matter most. Where we invest our money, where we buy, what we buy and how much, and even what we eat. That is what will determine our collective future. And in light of this current pandemic and the recession that is coming in its wake, we can't go back to normal. It was normal that got us here in the first place. So my message today is for all of us to embrace a new way of doing things, a way that is more female in a way, to make it into a new normal. Find the companies, find the funds, find the people who want to lead this change, and let's lead together. Check us out on snowball.im.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was really inspirational. So speaking of technology, we are going to go deeper and deeper as we go continue with this half of our panelists. So next we have Michelle Foley. Michelle is she is actually very fascinating. You know, I don't see a lot of women in cybersecurity. So she's working in the area of cybersecurity. She's a technical program manager, security program manager, and a business analyst with over 20 years of experience in IT. And she is currently based in Louisiana. She's working with Microsoft. So Michelle, can you tell us, do you feel that women are equally and adequately represented in cybersecurity, and why is their presence in this area crucial for our society? I think you've got some fascinating ideas here that people should hear.
Absolutely not. The approximate ratio of men to women in the workforce is 50-50. When you move to tech, it's the percent of women is about 20%. Right, so this is a gross underrepresentation. And I'll share Microsoft's data from 2019. If you filter the company demographics for technical roles, 21% are held by women. Across all roles in the company, it's 30%. These figures are no longer on the site, but I have these from a talk I did a few years ago. In 2012, the roles held by women was just under 24%. So we're making progress, but it's 1% a year, right? It's very slow. If we look at cyber across the industry, it's about 17% women. There's a huge skills gap in cybersecurity. Like 82% of employers report that there's a skills gap. By 2022, that's going to translate to almost 2 million unfilled positions. And why this is important, right? Can employers afford to restrict their hiring pool by gender with all of these unfilled positions? Cybercrime is now more profitable than the drug trade, right? This is tremendous economic impact with about $6 trillion a year. Okay. That's a trillion, right, with a T, which is one of the largest transfers of wealth in history. Right? So it's tremendous. We need the diversity of thought, right? Not just in cyber, in any industry. 91% of all cyber attacks begin with phishing, right? This is some sort of social engineering. 32% of all successful breaches involve phishing, right? So threat actors are already social engineering SMEs. Okay. Your security teams, your response plans, your security awareness training needs to include the diversity of thought and across all types of human behavior. It only takes one person to click the link to potentially allow an actor to set up resistance in your network. But it's just a complex issue. There's not a simple way to address it, but there are a few things that we can do. We need to promote STEM programs, not just for girls, for both genders, but these programs tend to start in grades 4 to 6, right? We're already losing some girls their interest in STEM already by this age. We need to start sooner. 65% of careers for the students today will be technology-based and technology that does not exist right now. So we need to prep them for that interest, one, so that they can be prepared for the future. Right. And we also need to work to keep out our unconscious bias from choices that we make for small children, right? What toys and things do we make available for boys versus girls, right? Keep those things out and work to make sure that this is not just what we do at home, what happens at school, right, and other institutions. We also need more women leaders, senior leaders, excuse me. I think this year we had a record number of women CEOs in Fortune 500 companies. It's 7.5%. Right? Wow, we've got a long way to go. And one additional one that has come up recently for me with some young women that I've mentored, job descriptions. We need to write these and rephrase requirements to be preferred qualifications or skills that would set you up for success. There needs to be a better way. Men will apply for a job typically if they meet 50 to 60% of the requirements. Women will not apply unless they meet 100%. So we are writing job descriptions that don't encourage women to apply that might otherwise be a successful candidate.
That's so important. That very, very important point you mentioned there, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to develop Femme Talent, because I felt that I think just by putting the job description on a female-only platform, hopefully it will give many women the courage to say, you know what, we are looking for having more women in this. But, we talked a lot about technology, but technology cannot progress without data, which is why our next guest is going to talk about data. And we know that there's a lot of data gap when it comes to understanding women's preferences, women's behaviors, economic behavior, and educational decisions. So our next guest is Tanya Gupta. She's a data analyst who's been for the last 10 years, and she is going to talk to us a little bit about this data gap.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I think what's really exciting about this is the fact that we're able to interact across time zones, but also bring so many different thoughts and mindsets together, which is also what makes it really exciting. My thinking has been fueled by some of the conversations that have happened before me. But some of the themes I will draw upon because they're relevant to the point that or the points that I'd really like to make and drive home. I think one thing that really stands out is this idea of the human element. As much as technology becomes an enabler, it is still very much about the existing within the realm of human beings and us as a society as we interact with each other. The other theme that I think is actually really important is different ways of approaching challenges, and it's the most innovative solutions is comes from looking at a problem in a different way, and it doesn't, and that essentially is a very strong definition of what innovation really is. But I mean, I was also listening to what Michelle was saying earlier about some of the stats on the gender gap when it comes to data. I mean, I'm one prime example. I work in data science. I lead a team of men. I happen to be one of the youngest, and I can assure you it's not an easy ride being taken seriously, especially if you look like a 16-year-old, and that is another completely different area of what it means to be a woman working in the tech industry, which I will not go into. However, when I speak of data, the idea or the word data, I elevate the idea of data from just being bits and bytes, and numbers and figures. Essentially, data is created from all the things that we do, the things that we interact with when we engage with the world. And you normally think that it should be a representation of us. However, the problem that we're faced with is that a significant amount of data is not representative of women. And this came up in some of the discussions we were having earlier, whether that's in the economic model, in how much of the sort of private labor or sort of, unreported labor that a woman carries out in caring for a child is actually being accounted for in the GDP or in the contribution to revenue. Not much, or not at all, I'd guess. The challenge essentially is that we have the data and we're making big decisions on the back of that, but it's not representative of women, and it is often designed, collected, interpreted with a gap. And that in itself creates a systemic and inherent bias in a lot of our decision making. One of my favorite books is by Caroline Credo-Perez, and she in her books in Invisible Women, she talks about these issues that gender-based data biases often cause, not just in tech culture, but in sort of general environment. So I guess, the things that we could start to think about when we're starting to impact society, I think the idea of introducing more women in the actual interpretation of data is actually quite crucial, because they bring that different perspective, because we know that, data is a human science. In the conversation, we know that human progress can only come when we're actually able to engage with the bias. So A, knowing that it exists, and B, bringing the different perspective in to actually account for that gap, it makes that data life cycle more meaningful. So we do need more women data scientists, engineers, but we also need philosophers, economists, policymakers, activists. We need sister carers and even moms to help make a difference in that data gap.
Thank you so much. That was very helpful, and I totally agree what you said about the book Invisible Women by Caroline. I always say again the name, her surname. I always forget. Caroline something Perez. Yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah, Invisible Women. I really think everybody should read that book because it is incredibly informative about lack of data and data gap about women. Okay, so our next guest is Deborah Bast. Is that how to say it?
Correct.
Deborah, yes, okay. So Deborah is, she's the Chief Marketing Officer and president of Nouveau Group, and she has worked she's done in-depth work around women in leadership capacities, and also to advance gender equality in the workplace, and to grow women, to grow the business of our world. So Deborah, today we want to have a chat with you about whether the underserved area of women's health an opportunity, because I know that you're working in this area quite a lot, and there's a big project you're working on right now. I know that that's taking up a lot of your effort right now. So it's around women's health and the kind of lack of maybe research and technology around women's health. Is this an opportunity to enable more women, create new markets, and bring in higher levels of socioeconomic activity for women? So could we see some kind of half full of the glass here?
Yeah, so thank you for having me, Somi, and good afternoon and good evening, everyone. So I'm here to share a story with you of why I left the trappings of a 25+ year career in multinational companies and all the good things that come from big co to join a new co and have the opportunity to create and build something in the underserved area of women's health. So I joined Nuvo. Nuvo is an Israeli health tech company with very novel technology for remote pregnancy monitoring and management. We got FDA clearance in March of this year and are poised to enter the US market in late Q4 of 2020 with global ambitions for expansion 2021 plus. So my assertion today, building on Somi's introduction, is that women's health has been underserved from an innovation, investment, and female leadership perspective. It's been a vicious cycle of problems that we need to flip to a virtuous cycle of solutions. So let me start with some friendly facts that put a fine point on market dynamics and the entrenched problems. So first, women are in seats of influence as chief purchasing officers and influences in healthcare. 90% of women are primary decision makers and key influencers on healthcare. 80% of women direct healthcare spending within their households. Despite many unmet clinical, experiential, economic needs for women from menstruation through menopause, and even in broad areas of chronic disease like cardiovascular health, where women are understudied from a data perspective, building on some of Tanya's themes, despite these deep unmet needs, only a very small portion of R&D funding in big pharma is invested in women's health today, about 4 to 7%. Since 2011, only 3% of all digital health deals have focused on women's health. And women only comprise 4% of CEOs and 21% of board members at healthcare Fortune 500 companies. So opportunity and underrepresentation in many areas. I now want to sort of flip the problem to a solution in my day job and personal mission. So I'm going to click into pregnancy care. There's been no meaningful innovation in pregnancy care in over 50 years. Women are underserved with outdated technology, tools, and care practices. There is unmet clinical need in pregnancy, and we see rising mother mortality as one symptom of that globally, with 300,000 related pregnancy or childbirth deaths every year. The current standard of care for monitoring doesn't respect that women like us are busy. We have jobs, we have educational commitments, we have families. We can't experience the deep burden of care that analog tools require of us. Despite advancements in technology in all areas of our life, look at how we're connecting across the world, across time zones in a global pandemic today. Women's health has not kept pace. And what we're seeing is mom being tied to brick and mortar care. I have to go to a clinic or a hospital to understand my fetal health in 2020. Moms also are disempowered by the black box of not understanding the health of her womb or her fetal health, despite what's possible with technology today. So there's really an opportunity to introduce technology and make mother the point of care and better serve her through digital tools for convenience, more personalized and more connected care. So my personal goal is to make an impact in better serving women and our next generation by reinventing pregnancy care for the 21st century with new technology, tools, and practices. I hope my message and personal example inspire many of you to join an emerging movement of women for women's health. We need more women to create the virtuous cycle of more innovation, investment, and female leaders at the table. Thank you.
Fascinating. Thank you so much, Deborah. That's exactly why we are here. You know, so far we've had, I said earlier, so far we've had about 8,000 people within 3 months who have expressed interest in, joining the think tank and following the movement. We're building a platform where women can raise money. They can gain investment, and we're doing some really interesting, in-depth work to build an infrastructure for an end-to-end, platform where women can raise money. They can then sell their products to the same, so the kind of infrastructure that has never been there before. It's a very ambitious goal, and I really, I'm just fascinated by the fact that within just 3 months, we've had 8,000 people from mostly America and US so far, that have expressed interest in this. So I really hope that we can help bring your dream to reality as well. But you're absolutely right. There's so many opportunities now for women thanks to technology, and I really hope that we can make that happen. So our next guest is Yoshna Verma. Yoshna has got an incredible CV. I mean, I don't even know where to start. So currently she is she's an associate director at Constellation Advisors, which is a management consulting firm. But she's also got a background having worked in companies in Wall Street, but also having worked with Morgan Stanley, Credit Suisse, and a New York Stock Exchange. So she comes from that background of the financial world. And I'm really fascinated by finding out, understanding how the future of financial services and money in general is transforming. And what does this mean to women? Because our digital economy the nature of digital economy is so different from the traditional economy. And it's like really interesting to see what this means for women in finance.
Thank you, Sami. Thank you for having me. And it's been a pleasure. And I feel honored to be among these talented speakers, panel speakers. As you mentioned that I've spent over 2 decades in financial services. My main area of financial services is in accounting, but I've pretty much directly and indirectly supported all areas of financial services, including trading, IT, operations, compliance, HR, tax, and even legal. In my over 2 decades of experience on Wall Street with various firms, as you mean, smaller firms that I've been part of, I've seen significant changes in digital economy. Women have been part of this digital economy. I'd like to say that if the COVID would have happened 20 years ago, we probably would not have there would have been a huge devaluation in financial services in general, but we're lucky that thankfully it happened in an era where we're able to maintain our presence in this digital economy. In terms of women, we've been heavily involved in bringing this change in digital economy. Diversity is being addressed among all firms at financial services. But Deloitte's research in 2019 suggested that only 20% of are executives, and women in general have only 23% of board representation, and which is supposed to be increasing to 31% by 2030. I feel this is still a very low percentage, and the presence of women that has been significant in this industry. We need to find a voice in this male-dominated industry, male-dominated culture in Wall Street, and the voices that haven't been heard or noticed in the past are finally being noticed. And in order for us to gain more visibility, I feel that there are 3 ways that I would like to suggest that we can gain more visibility. One is to be able to gain trust and confidence of our clients and our stakeholders. We need to be confident in ourselves. I keep seeing and hearing that women tend to be less assertive. We don't apply for jobs. Even earlier it was mentioned, Michelle mentioned it, that we don't apply unless we're 100% qualified for the job requirements itself, versus men are only 50 to 60% qualified. So since more typically comfortable with progression, promotion, pay rises, we tend to be more reserved about ourselves and about promoting ourselves. So this is very hard. So we have to show confidence in our display in the work area. So I'm part of this organization that's US-based, Leading Women in Technology, that provides a year-long professional development program where women with leadership skills and networks, they come in and they network among each other. They also join sessions with qualified speakers where they can boost their knowledge and their skills, learning from expert speakers and coaches through 9 thoughtfully paced and interactive workshops. So I would like to encourage those women to join platforms like these to be able to gain their confidence and to be standing shoulder to shoulder among men and all other professionals in the financial services. Second way is to be able to networking. One of the FemTalent is a great platform to be networking. This is thanks to Somi that's created such a great platform for us to be able to finding individuals that are in similar fields and ability to share our research, our thoughts, and kind of help elevate the women in general. So, and another tool is LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I keep hearing women, there are so many women that I know that are not part of LinkedIn or are not part of social media. You have to be in it to win it. I cannot emphasize this anymore, that regular network and joining substantive events can help women learn these new skills and connect with other women in professional fields. And last but least important is the most important part is to be able to support women. Those women who are in executive areas and are able to hire women have to support women, engage women, and be led by women. So we all have to create this community. That is the only way we're going to be losing that disparity of earning 80 cents on a dollar. We need to be able to get women on the table to share their views, to be part of the decisions. Cobey mentioned it, that statistics on VC funds led by women are doing far better than men. So because we lead with compassion, empathy, and intuition, and this continues to bring innovation. By women supporting women, financial services can continue to reduce disparity and increase diversity. Thank you, Somi. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Yosha. And I completely agree with you about, raising your voice. And actually, LinkedIn has been incredible for my career and building, all of this wouldn't have happened without it. I've been a LinkedIn top voice in the UK 2 years in a row. And, I came to the UK 15 years ago as a student to be then chosen by LinkedIn officially 2 years in a row, being a LinkedIn top voice. And I've had incredible people to have come into my life because of LinkedIn. I totally agree with you that we really need to build our confidence by practicing. I used to be terrible. When I first started giving talks, I was like sweating. I was so nervous, and people kept messaging me. They watched the videos and messaged me and said, "Somi, your voice is shaking." I was like, "I don't care. I'm just gonna do it," because you just build your confidence by doing it. And there's no way you could be in front of the mirror all day practicing. It's not going to make any difference. It's only when you actually go put yourself in front of people, that's the only way you build it. So you just have to not care when people criticize you. People are like, your eyebrows are like, what? They don't match, and your voice is shaking, and you have an accent. I was like, I don't care. I'm doing it. So I really hope that yes, please do. Women need to go out there and share their voice. So next we have Jyoti. So Jyoti and I actually met each other on one of these networks, a similar kind of situation where I was giving a talk at, it was the Ivy, right, network. And it was a really, really good talk there. And I met some very interesting people there. And Jyoti has done some incredible work. She's a conversational AI specialist, and I've been consulting her regarding things to build around helping women. And she has worked with companies like Google and Red Cross. I'm saying this everything from memory. See, I'm trying to not look at my notes. I'm doing well. So she's worked with American Red Cross, Google, Verizon, and she is also part of the Open Voice Network. So my main question to Jyoti is around how AI is positioned in a way that it's supposed to augment human intelligence and automate our mundane tasks. But this is like, when we are building these technologies, if we're only building it with half of society, because it's mostly built by men, there are not a lot of women really having an input there. What is the danger of it, and what will happen if we don't have enough women in these areas, and what can we do to bring in more women?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Somi, for including me in this incredible conversation. It's been fabulous listening to everybody. So I'm going to start with a very simple premise. So I've been in the enterprise space for a little over 20 years. I started out as a software developer, went on to do product development, product management, and then marketing. And one of the things I've realized is how enterprises think, and this is all about capitalism. Right? So it's almost like you have to bring the change from within. And if you speak the language of capitalism, I feel like that change will come about. So I would use myself as an example. So I'm one of 3 girls, no brothers. My dad raised us to basically be men, be women, be whoever we wanted to be. And I never felt that because I was a girl, I couldn't do something. So I think I've been blessed being surrounded by a dad who really encouraged us. And then I've had male mentors all my life. So when I've interviewed for jobs at enterprises, I basically would come in with the best things that I could put forward. And one of the best compliments, I took it as a compliment, is one of my best bosses said to me, he said, "You're more male than we have men on our executive team," which I will say was quite the compliment. But I'm a girl through and through. So here's my argument on enterprise and capitalism, especially as it relates to AI-enabled services. More than ever, even beyond just all the other interfaces we've built, be them application, mobile, conversational AI interfaces are natural interfaces. These are human interfaces. So I almost feel like you're bringing humanism into capitalism right now. So there's no choice. I've been told, we need a woman on our board to balance it out. I've been on executive teams. And it's almost like I'm that token checkbox, but not quite. So I had one of the best CEOs tell me, "You can have your cake and eat it too. I know you're a mom." And so men are part of this solution and this journey. So conversational AI has become this place where now there's no choices. Enterprises will not be able to win if they don't take care of half of human race. That are what Deborah was talking about, right? Women are buyers. That's absolutely right. If you don't take care of it, you're not going to make money. You're not going to win. The pandemic has actually shown us that there are winners and losers. And some of the winners, I'm going to put them in air quotes, is that they're getting crushed by volumes of people wanting service, customer service, and orders. They cannot handle it. So they have to come to conversational AI. There's a huge surge in projects that I started to see come my way because of that. And so as I work on these projects, I say, okay, how do we understand who our users are? Where's the journey map? And you got to think about humans. And when you think about humans, you have to think about women. And who can represent women best are women. You cannot have men sitting in the design role and think, well, how does a woman think? Well, I think we need a woman on the team. So I'm sensing, at least in the AI space, conversational AI specifically, you don't have a choice. And with the enterprises, I think they're realizing that. So that's my one part of the argument. The second part is retraining. So from a technology standpoint, we have conversational designers, we've got developers. You think about conversational designers and you say, well, we need empathy. We need empathy design. I was just actually on my project talking to my male counterpart, an architect on the same project I'm on. And I'm like, we need empathy designers. How are we going to get them? Looks like we need to include more women on the team, right? And the third part of this is being intentional. I think there's a tipping point coming. And things like where Somi's creating this femme talent, right? I think we've had these signs come in that say we are headed. And I think based on the tipping point, I sense a tipping point coming relative to technology. So, on that, we got to put people in the forefront of design, and women should be helping other women. I mentor a lot of women as well. And the one tip I will tell you is when you're looking at a job description, only pay attention to the top 3 bullets. That's all you need to meet. You don't need to go meet the other. The others are challenges, because when someone's writing the job description, they're saying the top 3 things must be there. Don't let anything else stop you. So back to you, Somi.
That's very interesting. Very, very good tips there. And I can't wait to have a full-on podcast interview with you, because I think you will be able to inspire so many women going into AI and and finding out that you don't necessarily need to meet all of those things, right? That just you just have to throw yourself into it. So our next guest is Christine Mackay. Let's see, how do I say Salamandra, right? That's right. So Christine, a very interesting background. I don't know if I told you, Christine, that I also studied in Dundee University, by the way, initially, before I went to St. Andrews. So Dundee University is really well known for its animation. They do really well there. So Christine now runs a animation studio in Eton and Dundee. She said something really interesting when Christine submitted her proposal. It was a little story that I'm going to ask her to make sure to tell us that story about how the society, and how the popular culture is shaped by animation and by film. But animation is part of that entertainment industry, and the little question, the little quote that you said, Christine, about when people type something about animation. I'll let you tell the story because I'm sure I will win
it. Great. Well, thank you very much, Somi, for organising and inviting me to yet another amazing international conference on such an important topic. So, as Somi mentioned, I'm Christine Mackay, founder and CEO of Salamandra UK. We're an animation agency, and we have got studios in Eton, in England, and Dundee in Scotland. And we specialise in helping international clients with their agencies solve visual problems that convey complex messages. We use 2D, 3D, augmented reality, and virtual reality, all that kind of stuff for business and entertainment. But so how do I see women being able to bring a new perspective and approach to animation? Well, to Somi's point, if you type in why animation needs a woman's perspective, the second Google result is, do animated female characters need to be pretty? So it's sad that this is even a question, but it also has a good point. Can you think of many lead animated female characters that don't look perfect or are stylized to be fantasy-like? If a woman's perspective is allowed in animation, it can be used in battling the negative effects of gender stereotyping and how women's issues are portrayed. It could bring real-life women's experiences to the screen and help young women understand what shouldn't be seen as normal and to be able to stand up against sexism. It may also introduce a wider variety of characters that do not conform to the tiny-waisted, big-eyed princesses. We need normal bodies to be represented so young girls aren't trying to live up to a standard that they physically can't achieve. And why not make the boxing champion, the swashbuckler, or the mad scientist female, for example? It's also a sad fact that there is such a thing as a Bechdel test used to rate films and animations, named after the American cartoonist Alison Bechdel. And the test has only 4 rules. Number 1, the story must feature 2 or more female characters. Number 2, who talk to each other. Number 3, about something besides a man. And number 4, and have names. It would be funny if it wasn't so sad. The test is most commonly used as a tool of critique to judge whether or not a major Hollywood production could be considered gender diverse or woman friendly. I'd like to highlight that women are climbing the positions of power in film and animation, but directing still seems short on women in film and TV, and I wonder if it's something to do with being normalized for women to take orders rather than to give them. So what do I think would be the overall impact on the economy and society at large to have this female perspective on animation? Well, I think it would definitely work towards closing the gender gap. And interestingly, our agency has more females than males, including in leadership positions. It would produce better role models that don't fit stereotypes. And the more women that get leadership roles in animation, the more normalized it will be, and it can inspire the next generation. And to use Simone de Beauvoir's phrase, it can help discourage women being seen as the second sex and encourage equality. So all in all, an important impact all around.
Fascinating. I really can't wait for us to have a conversation in depth, because as a filmmaker, I think there's so much that we can go into the further into that conversation. But very, very interesting points you brought up.
Thanks, Amy.
So our final guest, thank you. Our final guest is let me bring up here. Yes, Joshua Meredith. Joshua, I usually put people, whoever I choose as like the last person, has quite an important role, right? And there's a reason why you're the last person here. Our last our last conversation, our last conference, we had Sarah Monroe. You know, she was super, super popular. Everybody wanted to hear more from her. And I thought that you had something very important to share here today. I wanted to have a man's perspective, especially as well. As somebody, so you are a director of career advising and technology at Yeshiva University. You have also worked with, or you do teach at a few other universities, Yeshiva, Georgetown, and Molenbeek College, around ethics, and you have a real interest in technology education and helping women, you know, gaining equality. You did send me some very interesting points. I'm not going to take too much of your time from here on. I'll let you just share your points because I thought they were really powerful.
Well, thank you, Somi, for the lovely introduction and for having me here today. It's a great opportunity to kind of speak to everyone and really have the opportunity to sort of share some viewpoints from an education perspective. My job is to make sure that students are prepared for what's next in their career, for what they want to do when they leave college or the university, and that also in my classroom that we sort of think outside the box. I heard someone earlier today in our panel say, you know, we really need to think differently. And I think that's one of the hallmarks of something I try to teach. If you really look at what we're trying to build upon today, we're really trying to build on sort of how do women become leaders, more of a leadership, how do they join sort of the upper echelon of technology companies and really run business from that perspective. And that's something that I've been committed to for many, many years. And I think is really a way that we're going to really grow to a true equality. So I wanted to really touch on this from a few different viewpoints. First, women's growth in the technology sector isn't one routed problem, right? It's a multifactorial problem and with many avenues for us to potentially explore. From an education perspective, I really think about 4 ways that women can create deeper roots in the technology business and how we can really encourage that growth. The first thing that we need to do is we actually need to talk to men and educate men on how their conduct, actions, and ethics affect women in the technology workforce. Without sort of talking to men and explain how their actions, how their ability to act in meetings, in planning sessions, brainstorms, there's no way for them to truly understand where we are from that perspective and really to be able to grow equality overall. Second, I'm a big proponent of women continuing to have space in the technology fields, open environments or women-only groups such as local coding groups, hackathon courses. That has been proven educationally to really grow women's skill set. And I understand that that is an interesting perspective, that we should have women-only sort of groups. But I think that they're incredibly beneficial from a learning perspective and from a learning environment. It could really lead to sort of a larger growth. And I think that's one of the things that I really see. I run a large-scale technical hackathon named Hoya Hacks at Georgetown University. At Maryland University, they have what's called Technica, which is a female-only hackathon, where some of the best ideas come out of. And some of the teams that participate in that are hopefully will be up for VC funding so their ideas can become realities. Third, women need to be encouraged at an educational level to apply to the same roles as their male counterparts, right? And a number of people have said this over the sort of our panels here today. One of the things that I also want to encourage is we need to make women into entrepreneurs. We need them to be able to get out of the generalized sort of large-scale technology companies and really support that entrepreneurial growth, right? If you look at the companies that are the largest technical sort of infrastructure companies in the United States and globally, many of them were entrepreneurial companies less than 20 years ago. So entrepreneurial growth is really something that we have to sort of explore, and we need to teach that not only in the classroom, but extracurricular activities and at a younger age. And finally, one of the things I talk about often in my graduate school classes is that women post-college who did not get a traditional coding infrastructure education, right? They have a place in the business technology world as well. So we need to educate women who are past the point of where we have coding sort of as a technical standpoint. It's incredibly important for us to get there. And with that, I want to send it back to you, Somi. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much, Joshua. That was really, really important. The points that you brought up were really on so many levels. You know, the fact that having women, you know, collaborate in a kind of a safe environment where they're just like, you know, bouncing ideas, they don't feel necessarily judged. You know, so there's all of those things really helps having those female-only groups when it comes especially to tech, because I think that a lot of times maybe women do feel. I may be wrong, but definitely, you know, I have definitely noticed that. I think that if you're in an environment where it's majority men, and you know they're all coding, and you know they're speaking, you know, the kind of technical language, you know, as you go in, you could feel quite intimidated. It's a little bit like when I go to the gym, and you know, I remember, you know, going to the weight section where all the men are like lifting heavy weights and they're like making noises, you know, and I'm like, should I go in there or should I not go in there, you know? And that's why a lot of women, you know, kind of go in a corner and sort of trying to do little dumbbells and stuff, right? And it's exactly a similar kind of situation in the business environment. You know, I have been many times where I've been, for example, at the dinner table with other investors, and there's been situations where actually my investment was bigger than some of the other people on the table, but I was really made to feel small, basically, you know. So this does happen, you know. I think there is maybe some completely subconsciously. So we do need women-only groups, but we also need men in women's groups. You know, it would be nice to kind of create an environment where maybe women are the majority in a tech environment, and men are there. They are there as friendly supporters, but they are not necessarily the majority. We need to somehow find a way to balance that kind of feeling, you know, emotion that we have about going into these technical fields. I would love to ask all of you guys so many questions. We have already run over by quite a bit because of the technical hiccup in the beginning. I think it would be, there are so many questions, and it's like, you know, we still have pretty much, I've been looking at the numbers, you know, we still have got about 300 people live watching. You know, that's incredible to have that attention span. We've been on for 2 hours, and we actually started 10-15 minutes later as well. So it's been incredible, the conversations. I really want to have all of you guys back on, you know, for a longer, deeper conversation in podcast. There are so many questions. I think it would be unfair if I put anybody on now to ask them questions, because we have 20 of you guys, you know, and we did with the previous group, we didn't do it. But it's been incredible having you. Thank you so much from all of you for joining today. And you know, I think that I'm hoping that this conversation will be the start of something bigger. And Joshua, you should definitely put us in touch with some of the ladies that want to raise funds, because, you know, a big part of this platform is around helping women raise funds. And I'm doing a lot of in-depth work with our, you know, legal and financial team to get that part off the ground. And I have a lot to discuss about that with Daniela and Jyotia. I'm looking forward to having you help us with that. And Michelle, there's been some really big questions here for you. I will definitely have you on a podcast. Tanya, I'm looking forward to working with you. I think you will be very good as we go along. Christine, I hope that you can help us with, you know, the maybe developing some animations around, you know, as with our AI especially. And Yojana, I hope that we can get your experience and, you know, help as we are thinking about developing a framework, helping women with their financial, you know, situation, and thinking about finance in a bigger way. With that in mind, I'm going to say thank you to all of you guys and end the broadcast. I feel so elated. I'm really grateful for all of you guys being here.
Thank you, Somi. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, Somi.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you, Somi.
Thank you.
Bye.